Was Rose Namajunas' behavior against the former UFC strawweight champion Zhang Weili racist? In this video, I'm going to go into detail about why Rose's behavior was simply out of character and very unnecessary. And I want to start out by mentioning that this entire situation really had nothing to do with anything between Rose and Zhang, but rather just the countries in which they represent. Rose implied that her ancestors suffered under the influence of communism, which is what the country of China represents. And with Zhang being from China, she obviously has to represent her country. But that doesn't mean she automatically agrees with everything that her nation represents. So for Rose to make a fight personal based on what someone's country represents just shows that she may not be racist, but she is in fact xenophobic, which means that you promote discrimination against another simply because of their country. Her country has nothing to do with Zhang Weili specifically, which is why it was irrelevant to even bring up the entire situation. And you might defend Rose saying, well, that's reasonable. Well, let me ask you if this is reasonable. So, I myself am an African American man, and if I were to go and say, hey, I'm fighting this white American man, and his ancestors enslaved my ancestors, they harmed my ancestors, they raped them and beat them and things like that. And that's totally irrelevant. If I just said, because of this situation happening in the past, well, now I'm going to bring out all my anger and I'm going to beat the ever-living crap out of this white boy because what if his ancestors did? It doesn't make sense to bring something up of the past when most likely the person in which would be fighting would not agree with that specific thing. They would not agree with the harm and abuse that they went through in the past. So for Rose to bring that up, it was completely disgusting. And with the recent trend of Asian hate happening in America, I think it really triggered that in the UFC, as Zhang received a lot of booing and a lot of people wishing for her downfall for whatever reason. And this is sad to see because Zhang is one of the most positive role models in the UFC. And this is the reason why she's been my favorite UFC fighter ever since I laid my eyes on her. It's because of her positivity and her love for the sport and just the amazing role model that she is. You see a bunch of UFC fighters with their egos just being annoying, trying to show how big and bad they are. But with Zhang, it's the exact opposite. She really likes to congratulate her opponents, and she likes to become friends and make a lot of peace between martial arts. She just sees everyone as winners, and she sees everyone as warriors and martial artists that should all come together. And one more thing I would like to point out is that even though Joanna Jędrzejczyk happens to be one of the biggest trash talkers in women's UFC, she's basically the Conor McGregor of women's UFC fighting. But regardless of that, and regardless of the drama between Joanna and Zhang, even Joanna still decided to bump fists with Zhang, despite their drama they had at the press conference, and everything else they had going on before the fight anyways. But if you look at the fight between Rose and Weili, she did not decide to bump fists with Weili at the beginning of the fight. So she showed very disgusting behavior, but not only disgusting behavior, she showed very poor sportsmanship. And Rose was just becoming one of my favorite UFC fighters. You know, she's very humble. She's an amazing warrior. And I was like, wow, I'm really starting to like this gal. And then she just goes on and pulls this completely unnecessary trick, even with the recent trend of Asian hate going on in the US. It's completely disgusting. And it was something that didn't need to be brought up, you know. Just keep your ego out of it. Keep your politics out of it, you know. Because I know that if any African-American UFC fighter were to say, well, look at slavery, you know, now I have to beat up this white boy because his ancestors enslaved mine. It's completely irrelevant. And it's like, why would you bring something like that up? And just the fact that a big trash talker like Joanna Jędrzejczyk can show better sportsmanship than Rose It really just shows you that Rose isn't a very respectable fighter. And you may totally disagree with that, and that's fine, but that's just the opinion that I'm going to keep until she publicly apologizes for bringing politics into this, which was completely unnecessary. She could have kept that private and just simply knocked out Zhang without ever bringing in the fact that, politics or anything like that. You could have just did your thing, got everything done in the ring, and lived happily with it, not made it public. But regardless, Rose won the fight fair and square, and that's what I want to give props to her about. She prepared very well for the fight, and she did her research, and she executed amazingly, and she came out with the win. So props to Rose for that, and I know Zhang will come back to get her belt, so I want to wish good luck to Zhang for when she returns, and I hope that Rose can maybe tighten up a bit and maybe go to China and try and, give Zhang some home advantage for once. So we'll see how that pans out, and I really hope to see an immediate rematch between Zhang and Rose, because I really think that Zhang deserves this immediate rematch. And a lot of people were saying that she was making excuses, but let's cut Zhang some slack, please. This girl hasn't lost a fight since the beginning of her career. The first fight that she lost was her first fight. So she's really not used to losing. And people were saying that she didn't handle the loss properly, but this is someone who's trained extremely hard for every fight that she has. And for it to end in the way that it did, she was very, very reasonably angry. But that's fine. She accepted the defeat and she moved on. She's going to train harder and she's going to come back harder. And there's even still people making some claims that she's making excuses, but Zhang isn't making excuses. She's just pointing out the factors in which could have played a role in why she lost. But she does accept the result, is what she said in an interview with her coach. So everyone just needs to cut Zhang some slack and stop all the hate on Zhang, because she really doesn't deserve it. Out of all the UFC fighters, out of all the MMA fighters I've seen, she does not deserve it. And this is why I think the UFC does not deserve Zhang. It's because it's so problematic when it comes to things like this. And not even just politics, but just in general. But these are my personal thoughts, and I'd like to know what you guys think down below. So leave a comment and let us know what you think of the entire situation. And you guys best believe that Zhang will be back to get her belt.